All right, we're all back together again talking horse racing on Prime Sports Network. So it's good to have Chad back in town. Chad, how are you?
Tired, but okay.
How was your sale?
Well, it's tough to use the word successful, but
Use it.
we're happy with how everything went, and in the next 12 to 24 months, we'll tell you whether or not it's successful.
Is that like the draft, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would think that we got a good grade from Scouts.com and ESPN.com and et cetera, et cetera. Good reviews. Got the best deal in the draft, and we'll see how everything comes together.
Is that how you feel all the time?
Basically, yeah, I'm a pretty optimistic person.
Well, it's good to have you back. John, we had a good week last week. It's good to have you back.
I'm glad to be back, and glad Chad's back, and glad you're back.
We're all back. Yes. Let's pick up where we left off last week. Let's stay on a roll. So
well, we could keep it going.
Yeah. And we kind of figured, once we got away from all of the graded stakes races, we cashed in on all three races. So and hit a big one. So that was a great week last week. Hope you tuned in. If you didn't, only for the free show, then I don't know what you're waiting for. $5 a month. Check it out. No strings attached. Get your money back. Well, you don't get your money back, but $5. If you don't like it, just you don't subscribe again. It's easy. Prime SN. Patreon.com. So check it out. We have 3 races again. And the free race today, before we turn over to our Patreon show, is going to, and they're all from Parx Racing, but the first race that we're going to talk about today is the Pennsylvania Derby. And this is a 1.125 miles, $1 million purse for 3-year-olds, and that means CyberKnife is back. So this is now this is not a Breeders' Cup Challenge race, which is kind of weird, but significant nonetheless.
But the Haskell was a Breeders' Cup Challenge race, so yeah, he's not worried about that. He's headed to the
CyberKnife is set, and I don't know if anybody else in this field is set. For is Taiba going to the Breeders' Cup just yet? Not sure. Anyway, let's run through the field, starting with the 1, Zandon. And Zandon, you got Brown and Rosario, so that's as good as it gets. Coming off a 3rd at the Travers. Back-to-back 5s, John. So what about Zandon? Is Zandon ready for his first big win since the Bluegrass?
Well, he hasn't really done anything wrong. He ran a 5 last time out. I'm curious to know, maybe Chad knows, why Pratt got off the 1 to go ride the 6. So We the People. I thought that was a little unusual, but he opted for We the People over Zandon. I don't know why. And he's okay. He fits. He's one of the contenders. You have 3 major players here: Zandon, CyberKnife, and Taiba. And after that, a lot of them look the same.
Chad, what about Zandon?
I mean, to answer John's question, look, I don't know that this is necessarily was on their radar right away, where We the People was committed to going here after the West Virginia Derby as a horse that Flavian's rode before. He's close with Rudolph Brissett. And obviously with Joel Rosario available, it wasn't difficult for Chad Brown to be okay using Joel. It's a race he won before with Connect, who actually beat Gunrunner back in 2016. Look, Zandon, he's a nice horse. He's never been off the board in any start of his life, and he's obviously going to take a lot of money and comes in off good numbers and was just a neck behind CyberKnife last time he ran. And everyone's going to say that the rail draw for him is going to be no bother because he's going to look to save ground anyway and make the 1 run. The question I have with Zandon is, can he win this kind of race? I mean, he's been one of those buts a few times, had some difficult trips. I know he won the prep race in the Wood or the Bluegrass, and he became the now horse. But the Bluegrass, in hindsight, isn't really the strongest field that he beat. I think, in my opinion, he's just not as good as the top 2 in here, and he'd have to run a new career best. And I'm not sure that he's capable of it. And to be honest with you, he's a horse that's been well spotted by Chad Brown. Chad Brown's made it known already that this will be his last start of the year. It just makes me feel like it's a big ask. I know it's just running 3 races in 3 months, which is not out of the norm for most horses. But for this horse, that's a big ask. I know he's worked twice since the Travers, but I just think he's up against it here.
So it's interesting because if you look at these fives, so Zandon's got back-to-back fives. CyberKnife has 1 5, and Taiba has a 5. So that's impressive, John.
Yeah, the horse is okay. I mean, I don't think he's, like Chad said, I don't think he's as good as the top 2. But if he won, I wouldn't be shocked. Let's put it that way.
So you said this is it for Zandon?
For this year.
Wow.
Yeah, they're going to come up and bring him back next year. And, to me, that's not necessarily a sign I like to hear about, in a race that's September 24th with the Breeders' Cup coming up, the Cigar Mile, a lot of different, options that are out there for a young, healthy horse like Zandon. And to say right away ahead of time that you're putting him away for the year, to me, makes it sound like we're already kind of reaching into the excuse box. And I'm going to try and take a stab against Zandon here. I'm actually going to leave him off my tickets completely.
Okay. The 2 and 3 are long shots. I'm not sure why the 2's here. I guess whoever owns the horse just wants to, join the party.
Well, he's a local horse, so that's why he's here. 2 of his last 3 starts were at Parx, but he has no chance.
And he also locally ran for $8,000.
Right.
Look, exactly. I know he's a Calumet homebred. I know he's by Keen Ice, and I know Rich Strike won the.
This would be a bigger upset.
Derby.
Rich Strike.
Yeah, this would be a bigger upset. And I mean, to be honest with you, I don't think this horse's entry should have even been allowed in the race. I just, it's an unnecessary horse. He won't come in the top 3/4 of the field. He'll probably run last, and he's just going to take up space in what'll be a really, really good competitive field. I wish his entry actually would not have been accepted.
And then, the 3 horse, B-Doc, had a 9 in April, but that's about it.
He's another one. He's too slow. He's not as slow as the 2, but he's slow compared to other horses.
Look, he's run some sneaky fast races. He actually, the connection started with running him in the Preakness after the impressive maiden win at Keeneland, and he wasn't Triple Crown nominated. So he actually ran in the Sir Barton on the undercard, running actually a pretty good second Dethrow Road. My bigger concern with B-Dog is the fact that, does he really want to go this far? He hasn't really shown any signs. Looks like 7/8, 3/4 might be his best distance. 1 1/8 against this competition and this quality of field might be a big ask. But hey, Doug O'Neill's done it before. Okay,
let's go to one of the long shot contenders, Skippy Longstocking at 10-1. Last 3 races, we've seen a 10, 9, 7, John. Those races were the Preakness, the Belmont, and the West Virginia Derby, which was actually a win running that 7. Second 7 in the last 4 races for Skippy Longstocking. Is this horse, this kind of horse that has a shot of getting in the money so you can make some money?
Well, he certainly has a shot somewhere on the bottom. He's not good enough to beat CyberKnife or Taiba at this point.
Chad, Skippy Longstocking, can you make some money on the exacta trifecta with this horse?
Look, I mean, it's difficult for me. Look, when these are late 3-year-olds in their season now, they've been running for a year and a half now and stuff like that. Skippy Longstocking's race for me last time is a toss out because it was run over a sealed, sloppy track, just kind of a weirdly run race. I mean, no matter what that number came back, and Jonathan, maybe you can explain this to me, right? Like, is this a race where if you go back and you look at the last race and you watch the replay, and, you toss it, like how much credence do you give the number? Obviously, the regs and number takes into account all of that and the condition and all that kind of stuff. But what do you do with the West Virginia Derby and the condition of in which it was run to handicap moving forward to a race like the race like Saturday?
I wouldn't I wouldn't put too much stock into it either way, whether you liked the race or didn't like the race, because right. it was a screwy track, like you said. It was a sealed track, sloppy track at Mountaineer. During the day when they run their races at night, it was just a strange situation. The horse happened to have run well, and he liked the track that day. If you didn't run well, you certainly could have blamed the track.
No, absolutely. But I mean, my only thing is, all right, if I toss that race out and then I look at his last 3 or 4, he's just not good enough. And so to
Well,
me,
even if you look at the last race, it's not good enough. I mean, it's only a 7. You need a 5 or better.
yeah, I just don't think he's good enough. Like the name, but I don't think he's good enough.
All right. Well, I mean, what you're hoping for, of course, is that even though he hasn't run the 5, he is trending in the right direction with the 10, 9, and 7.
Yeah.
And he's only 3 years old. First of 2 horses, by the way, for Safi Joseph in this race. The 5 is CyberKnife. As you can see, John has got the hat over. He's broken out the CyberKnife hat. So CyberKnife now is pretty much like a co-favorite. So there's no hiding CyberKnife any longer. Coming off a 7 at the Travers, finishing second to Epicenter. So what are you feeling about CyberKnife? We know you're going to pick him, but what do you feel about CyberKnife overall, John?
I expect him to make a forward move. Last time he was taken out of his game when early voting never went for the lead, and Giroux found himself on the lead. Not that Giroux did anything wrong. You know, he did the right thing the way the race developed, but I think he's better off coming from behind, and I think he's better when he has a target to aim for. If you remember the Arkansas Derby or the Haskell, both of those races, he came from out of it. And I would expect him to run that kind of race on Saturday, and I expect him to make a forward move. Not only that, the rail that day at the Travers was really probably not the place to be, and he was game to hold on for second, and I would expect a forward move.
CyberKnife winning in 1 1/8 the Arkansas Derby, 1 1/8 at the Haskell. So he's looking to go 3 for 3 at 1 1/8 in the Pennsylvania Derby, Chad.
Look, it's probably his best distance, and look, there's a lot of things to take away with this entry. Okay, there was no pressure whatsoever on Brad Cox to run in this race, right? That the Travers was the midsummer goal, and then from there it's the Breeders' Cup. And the Breeders' Cup's in 9 weeks, and what do you do? What is the best way of and plan of attack and way of going there? And the one thing that CyberKnife has done throughout this entire year, despite his supposed quirks and all that kind of stuff, is CyberKnife is really good at touting himself about when he's ready to run, about what he likes to do. I've seen both of his last 2 workouts, the one by himself, the one in company with Tawny Port, and he just gets it now. He's maturing, he's growing up, he'd be an even better 4-year-old, and he's taken the connections to the Pennsylvania Derby more so than the connections are taking him. And I think that's an important thing, because it's not one of these things where it's like, oh, we have to run in this race. We're trying to, be 3-year-old champion or whatever. This is just a simple spot of, what, he's doing good. It's a good spot. We know he takes his track with him. Parx, you guys spent the last couple of weeks handicapping some quirky surfaces with Kentucky Downs and Aqueduct and all these other things. The one thing about Parx is Parx can be a quirky track. And the one thing with CyberKnife is he's taken his track with him wherever he's gone. Not only is he 2 for 2 at 1 1/8, but he has wins at 5 different tracks this year. So to me, that's kind of the telltale sign. He gets a perfect draw. He's got a jock with all the confidence in the world in him, in Florent Giroux. And the way the race sets up here compared to the Travers, he should work out any kind of trip, and it'll work out well. I still don't understand why everybody said he had the perfect trip in the Haskell. To me, Taiba had the better trip. He just was a greener horse. CyberKnife made his own trip and came up the inside and was able to hold off Taiba. But I just think that we've seen a lot of growth from CyberKnife over the last 60 days since they met in the Haskell. And while people might say that Taiba was getting to CyberKnife at the end of the race in the Haskell, it's going to be maybe more of the same. I just don't think Taiba's a better horse than CyberKnife. I didn't think it then. I don't think it now.
The 6 is We the People. John, you referenced Flavian Pratt moving over to choosing We the People. Pratt was on board 3 times out of the 6 starts. 12-1. So that's what you got to like about We the People. A very talented horse. Was on Chad's Kentucky Derby pole for a little bit. Last 3 races, 8, 10, 8. So is this a horse that we want to try to make some money on along with CyberKnife?
Well, the 8 is that he ran last time was on Lasix. He's off of Lasix Saturday. Doesn't his sheet look similar to Skippy Longstocking? Skipping Longstockings had the 7 and got back to the 7. This horse had the 8 and got back to the 8. So those sheets are kind of comparable to me. You know, he's going to be on the lead, so that's a plus for him. You know, if they leave him alone, I guess he has a shot to get brave, but I don't think he's as good. I mean, he faced CyberKnife already in the Arkansas Derby, and CyberKnife beat him by 13 lengths that day. So, you know, before you have him beating CyberKnife, I would give it a double take.
Well, who do you like between We the People and Skippy Longstocking?
It's tough. Probably Skippy Longstocking, only because he ran the sevens and the other one ran eights. So and Skippy Longstocking, it says 10-1 and 12-1. I think Skippy Longstockings will be longer than We the People.
Yeah, right. Okay, Chad.
You know why 8 was scared of 7?
What? Why?
7, 8, 9. Listen, at the end of the day, I have to disagree with you here, Jonathan. We the People. First of all, we talked about that track last time. I don't think he cared for that track. I didn't care for that ride. I like to see Flavian Pratt back aboard, who tends to sometimes get horses left, but the fast horses he seems to break out of the gate with no problem. I'm very curious about this race because I don't know that Mike Smith wants to make the lead. Everyone says Taiba has speed. I can envision a scenario here where We the People is in front by himself. And on a track like that at Parx, especially on a big day.
They soup it up on big days. They scrape it for sure.
Know, if you go back to his race in the Peter Pan, and I know you got to go back, 3 or 4 starts, but if you go back to his race in the Peter Pan, I'll excuse the Arkansas Derby effort because it was back on short rest. They were toying with what race they want to run in, and they try to teach him and take back. He doesn't want to take back. He wants to go. He wants the lead. And I think he breaks with every intention to make the lead. And if Taiba doesn't go early, CyberKnife's not in a desirable position to try and set the fractions like he did in the Travers. I can see We the People making the lead. And if the People makes the lead by himself on that kind of track, he could get brave and can certainly hang around for a piece. I like We the People a lot better than Skippy Longstocking, just more so than anything, just the way that the race sets up for him here. I just, we saw in the Travers that early voting was playing games and Chad Brown took him back and he just choked under the pressure. But at the end of the day, We the People is going to go. And I don't know that Taiba is truly fast enough.
Taiba's not fast enough to stay with We the People. There's no way.
I think they let We the People. I think they let We the People clear. And and then Mike Smith's going to try, I would imagine, to get the outside trip and force CyberKnife inside. And then kind of make it a match race between the two of them. But this is 2022 Mike Smith, not 2002 Mike Smith. And I don't know that he's strong enough to keep Florent kind of boxed inside.
All right, Tawny Port next up at 6-1. Irad Ortiz Jr. and Brad Cox combo. And Tawny Port, winner of the Lexington and the Ohio Derby. Back-to-back 9s coming in here. So he's got the 2 9s, which were the best numbers that Tawny Port has put together, John. Third last time out to Epicenter in the Jim Dandy in July.
Yeah, but they're 9s. Listen, we're talking about Skippy Longstocking 7s, We the People 8, Tawny Port 9, and we're forgetting that CyberKnife has 5, Taiba has 5s, and Zandon has 5.
Yeah, and I mean, why is Tawny Port 6-1? Why is he a better play than We the People or Skippy Longstocking?
He's not in my.
Well, it's Brad Cox, the back-to-back Eclipse Award-winning trainer, and Irad Ortiz, who's always competing for the Eclipse for the top rider. So you have top connections, and he's a fresher horse than some of the others, having not run since the Jim Dandy. This has kind of been his plan, but I agree with Jonathan. I just don't think he's good enough. I don't think he's fast enough, and I don't think he's good enough.
Okay, the 8 is Taiba. So this is the favorite of the race at 5-2. Baffert is back, of course. Had the Haskell second place finish, the CyberKnife last time out, which was in late July. Ran a 5 in that race. So if if you're a big Taiba fan, you're going to draw the line to the Kentucky Derby. Anything can happen there. You ran a bad race. So
I'm going to read 7-6-5.
Yeah, 7-6-5 in the 3 races is very impressive.
Well, that's why I'm reading it, and he's got time off. He's fine, but there's a few things. First of all, he only has 4 career starts. This is career start number 5. And where's he been, really, from the Haskell? He should have run somewhere, something. And Baffert opted not to run him. I'm not going to question Baffert, and obviously the horse needs time between races because if you remember from the beginning, Chad said he didn't like the way this horse worked or whatever, so maybe he has problems that the public isn't privy to. That being said, I'm looking at 765. Obviously, he's a major player here.
Chad?
Look, to me, this has been their plan all along. With Baffert being suspended from Saratoga, didn't want to run under the name of John Terranova like he did with some of his other horses. There's no straight 3-year-old race in California, really, other than the Shared Belief, which would have been too close to this race. And he's a little horse. Taiba and CyberKnife are both by Gunrunner, who's turned into this, unbelievable sire, and everybody that's a Gunrunner seems to be a champion, and he's the number one sire of 3-year-olds, et cetera, et cetera. But they could not look more different. Taiba is a very, very smaller version. He's a lot more similar to the way that Gunrunner was as a 3-year-old, and Gunrunner was okay as a 3-year-old, but he got beat in the Pennsylvania Derby, he got beat in the Breeders' Cup Mile. It was as a 4-year-old that really Gunrunner found his stride, and Taiba's a nice horse, but I don't think he's really the next level. I mean, the hype train came out from the first race where he beat nothing and he won a maiden race, and then he won the San Antonio Derby where everybody told him not to run. He got the perfect trip against horses, by the way, who nobody's come out of that race and run back.
Right.
Think about it, right? You have
they're all MIA.
Messier,
who doesn't come back until October 1st, hasn't run since. Messier disappeared off the face of the earth. Maybe hockey season was over, so he needed to take a break. I don't know. And the Doug O'Neill horse that somehow ended up running in the Kentucky Derby that has done nothing ever since. So, I mean, look, take nothing away from him. He ran well in the Haskell, but I thought he was very green, more so than anything else. And if you're green at Monmouth Park, you're going to be very green at Parx because that is a very, very tricky racetrack. I know he's going to train over for a couple of days, but it's also interesting to note that Bob Baffert sends 2 horses. He sends Taiba and he sends Dare Manor for the cotillion, and did not send his number 1 exercise rider. Beto stays in California with some of those 2-year-olds, getting them ready for the Breeders' Cup. I find that very interesting that he did not send his top rider here to get on these horses for the 3-4 days. To me, that's a telltale sign. I know Jimmy Barnes is here and Jimmy's his number 1 assistant, but the fact that they didn't bring their top rider, I thought was interesting.
All right, and then you have Simplification, a 10-1. This horse is running a lot of big races with the big boys. Did win the Fountain of Youth, was in the money at the Florida Derby and the Holy Bull. Didn't do a whole lot at the Kentucky Derby or the Preakness. Coming off a 9 last time out. Did run an 8 in the Holy Bull. That's the best we've seen from Simplification, John.
I don't like this horse. I mean, he's a little slower. I don't like him.
Chad?
I like the fact that they sit the horse over early to get a couple works over this track. We talked about how interesting this track is. He's worked twice over here. He picks up the services of Paco Lopez, which is certainly interesting. But I agree. I don't like him.
And then he got a long shot coming off. If you look at the 3 races previous, actually, if you take a look at the 4 races throughout the turf race, this horse has a 17, a 13, a 9, and an 8. Trainer change. So there's that. Naval Aviators 20-1. If you just look at the sheet line, though, that's not bad, John, for 20-1.
No, I'm using this horse on the bottom somewhere because he has excuses. He's really never done anything wrong. He started with a 20 and 13 last year. This year he came out, he caught a sloppy racetrack, then he ran on the turf. Then he went 13, 9, 8. Well, why can't he run an 8 or better? And that could get you somewhere on the bottom. He certainly looks a lot like We the People and Skippy Longstocking and Simplification. And Tawny Port. The only difference is he'll be 30-1 here. So for that reason, I'm including him underneath, your tries or supers, something like that.
It's also, I think, important to note Naval Aviator is coming out of a race where he ran against older horses. So other horses have been running against straight 3-year-olds. Naval Aviator took on a really, really nice horse of Todd Pletcher's last time that came back and ran, I think, 4th in the Jockey Club Gold Cup. So, certainly nothing to be embarrassed by. But, I mean, obviously this is a much tougher field.
And who's this trainer? I haven't heard of the trainer before. Ernesto Padilla Preciado.
But he has 186 starts and he's winning at 15%, so he can't be that bad.
He's a Parx guy.
He's a Parx trainer. A Parx trainer.
White Barrio rounds it out. The 11 horse at 8-1. White Barrio just look at 2 of the last 3 races were disasters. 19 and a 24.
Both of those were without Lasix, by the way, and he'll be without Lasix this week as well. This horse is spent. He was better early in the year. He was better around Derby time, and since then, no bueno.
Chad?
Look, they said they were sending him for a freshening after the Haskell. Freshening included working him every 7 days. Certainly feel like a preparation for the Pennsylvania Derby, but he's worked fast. For whatever it's worth, he's worked he worked 58. He's worked very, very quickly into the race, but I don't know that he's as good as some of these others. That would be my main concern.
Your pick, John.
CyberKnife on top, over. Well, Chad talked me into We the People over Zandon, so I'm going to go 5 over 6, 8, 10 out of respect to my good friend Chad.
Chad?
I'll go CyberKnife over We the People, and I'll throw B-Doc in for just the heck of it. But I think it's CyberKnife's race to lose for sure.
6-3. Okay. And sounds good. I think the only other horse that might get in there for some money would be Skippy Longstocking, but you guys covered it all. All right, so that is it for our free race of the week. Want to thank everybody for tuning in, and hopefully you'll become one of our viewers over on our Patreon page at patreon.com/PrimeSN for just $5 a month. For our Patreon viewers, we continue.